A minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Clear, Vance outclassed Walz tonight. I mean, I was watching this, and all I could think of was, man, Walz is so in over his head. I mean, can you imagine this guy sitting in the White House Situation Room with that facial expression that's like 50% sheer terror and 50% extreme bafflement? I mean, it was amazing, the split screen difference between a competent Vance and a totally in over his head Walz. The answer on why he lied about his trips to China and the Tiananmen Square thing was probably the worst VP debate meltdown since Stockdale in '92. You know, who am I and why am I here? It was 2.5 minutes of absolute terrible. For Vance, night of redemption. All the political media has told us that Vance was a terrible pick and Walz was going to bring in all these voters. That charade is now over. Walz does not belong at this level of American politics. Vance does. Final verdict, Tim Walz wandered into the wrong bar tonight.
Hey, man. J.D. Vance won that hands down. I don't care what anyone else says. And my summarized, I guess, take from the debate was it was a very substantive debate. I liked it a lot. It was nice to get away from, you know, just the name calling that Kamala Harris was bringing into the debate. I'm just calling a spade a spade. As you saw from the intro and you saw from some of the reactions from some people from the mainstream media, it kind of happened exactly as I expected it to happen. Only thing is, people wish that J.D. Vance was more aggressive, but I think J.D. Vance was making a tactical decision. Like maybe he was just trying to appeal himself more humbly because of the fact that he was getting such negative media attention. Coming in, his favorability was lower than Tim Walz. So I think J.D. Vance was using this debate to really increase his favorability with voters, and I think it worked in this instance. Now, I opened up with him calling out experts, and this is something that I personally been doing, is that a lot of our experts are compromised. They leverage their position of authority to push politicized worldviews or political ideology on the masses. One of the examples that I use is journalism. Journalism is my biggest example. Many of them, there's more Democrats in journalism than Republicans. There's Charlie Kirk's reaction. J.D. Vance slamming the so-called experts is spot on. They were wrong in 2016, and they're wrong again in 2024. Trump's economy was a historic economy and boom based on common sense. Economic boom based on common sense. The so-called experts have been wrong about nearly everything. The experts should be fired. And this is something that Donald Trump talked about in his previous debate with Harris and his criticisms for Biden, is that they don't fire anybody. I still remember vividly the economic expert that's supposed to be Biden's economic advisor, and he could not explain how government printing does not cause inflation. And this is why I recall a lot, is because in my comment section, when I blame inflation on government spending, many people say, no, Kenny, it's not government spending, it's corporate greed. And I'm like, yo, that's such an idiotic statement that was said in the comment section, to believe that, oh, all of a sudden, when Democrats are running for office, that's when corporations want to be greedy. There has to be a cause for that effect to happen, and they don't. It seemed like a lot of people, especially people who want to justify why they want to vote for Democrats, they don't want to look at what is the cause of that. Instead, they just want to blame the effect on something that they think justifies their vote for Kamala Harris. And I just want to digress, because the expert point, I think, is a good lead-in because of the fact that J.D. Vance did exactly what I wanted him to do in my preview. If you look at my preview, I said that JD Vance should be ready just in case that the moderators will try to fact check him, and he should fact check them right there in that moment, and he did just that. So let's take a look at this clip, and then I'll give you further of my further reaction to it. Let's take a look.
Just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process.
I mean, it was funny that the minute I saw those two women moderating the debate, I was like, oh my God, they're going to want to stick to the format. Because I noticed with women anchors, they tend to be more like regimented on how exactly the format's going to go. Hey, you have 1 minute to speak. You have 1 minute to speak. It's your turn. But with me, I found the most interesting parts of the debate was when they were like talking back and forth without having to worry about, oh, wait, actually, it's your turn to speak. No, actually, it's your turn to speak. But the moderators, I felt like they interject themselves a little bit too much, trying to make them conform to the format instead of letting the format conform to them. That's just my only critique about the format. But they did get called out for trying to fact check Vance and then cutting off his mic when he tried to explain why he thinks that this temporary status thing is actually a loophole to essentially mask illegal immigration. And that's exactly how I took it as an independent voter when I was watching that. And I asked my wife, who's not really into politics, I said, what are your thoughts about that statement like that happened? Because it happened early enough in the debate when my wife was paying attention to it. And she was saying, yeah, that don't sound right. It sounds like you're just saying, like, let's say someone steals something from you and you're just saying, oh, well, he's innocent because I waived all his crimes, even though I had my property stolen, even though there's evidence that this person stole my property. You just absolve him of his crime. And that's how my wife, as someone who's not really into politics, that's how she took the temporary status that after Vance explained it. And I think that was a very important thing for Vance to do, and I'm glad he did it. This is something that I warned about in my preview for the debates. If you want to verify that, you can check it out yourself. But in my preview, I warned that JD Vance should be ready to fact check the fact checkers if the moderators try to inject themselves into the conversation. And it seemed like not a lot of people agreed with what JD Vance did. And I think that it was important for JD Vance to do that. Now, everyone's making fun of Tim Walz and how he didn't look good. Like it was the Biden effect. Remember how Biden was looking all jewelry-eyed? And the same thing was kind of going on with Tim Walz. My wife was like, why does he look like that? Why does he look shocked? Like he got asked a question, right? Buffering on a slow Wi-Fi connection. Reactions to Tim Walz are in and they're not good, right? So here's 15 minutes in, and it's clear that Walz was not doing interviews was a big mistake. He's nervous, and JD Vance is comfortable because he's been doing an adversarial interview a day since he was picked. Walz frequently freezes like he's buffering on slow Wi-Fi connection. Tim Walz wandered into the wrong bar tonight, which is what the commentary that Scott Jennings listed out earlier. But I want to get to this point in the video about peace. As you guys know, Israel launched attacks at Hezbollah, destroyed Hezbollah. I give them credit. I feel like they should have done this a lot faster, like they did with Gaza, I think. But whatever. Beggars can't be choosers. You can't really choose how a nation reacts to when they're attacked first. And AKA, look, if you throw the first punch, don't get mad at how someone reacts. That's all I'm trying to say. And this is going to be an interesting clip that I'm going to show you. First, I'm going to show you a flashback of Kamala Harris in 2019 making the argument that Donald Trump will get us into a war with Iran. And then 5 years later, after she made that statement on MSNBC, in reality, it was her administration an administration that she was part of that is making us get closer to a war with Iran, all because of the things that they did, unfreezing assets to Iran, and then Iran using those unfreeze assets to buy weapons for Hezbollah to allow the attack on Israel. But I digress. Let's take a look, and I'll give you further commentary after.
Tweeting out, this bravado about, lock and loaded. What does that mean? Okay, and also,
well, it's an implicit military threat that the U.S. is going to use. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. And again, listen. As far as I'm concerned, this president is motivated by his personal insecurities more than he is our national security. If this president is thinking about putting us in a position where we're in a war with Iran, the consequences will be absolutely unacceptable and tragic in terms of the young men and women who are American soldiers who would be sent and deployed into something that was completely avoidable. In a Harris administration, we wouldn't have gotten ourselves into this mess. I do not believe that the current president of the United States is working in the best interest of the people of this country. I have good reason, based on everything we know publicly, to suspect and to be concerned that his motivation is more out of self-interest than it is the interest of the American people. I'm traveling our country and meeting with the families who are sending their sons and daughters to these endless wars. And this president better take very seriously any threat that he makes to enter us into another war and send our young men and women into battle.
And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
And this is a lot of, as a voter, I think many American voters should be weary of, is that people try to cast doubt on things that are said. At the end of the day, you are the judge of the information. And you can't actively judge. A judge can't actively give a verdict on something unless they have got all the information from both sides. And when Brain tried to fact check Vance, and they did this a lot, especially when it came to economy, for instance, J.D. Vance mentioned how illegal immigration causes housing prices to go up. And Vance, the moderators were like, well, there's no evidence of that. Wait, actually, they try to follow up on Vance and say, hey, what studies are you referencing that actually explains that? Because that sounds like that's not possible. And I laugh because I remember there was a caucus, I forgot what they're called. It was for African Americans, and they showed how illegal immigration hurts African Americans' economic participation in towns of where illegals came in. It was in 2008, I believe. It was a 2008 research think tank group that released this findings. It was specific for African Americans. And like I said, this has been my argument. I'm an American. I'm a Pan-American. I'm only for America, right? And I know, based on pattern recognition, correlation, if it affects Black America, it affects all of America. If it affects white America, it affects Black America. Because what was the common thesis here? Americans. So the idea that it sounds to these moderators and to Tim Walz that it sounds preposterous that illegal immigration will hurt housing prices, increase housing prices, make it harder for people economic participation, which I have shown evidence of this in prior videos. For instance, when 600 illegals got deported out of a town, and those jobs that they were occupying opened up, Americans filled those jobs immediately. When Donald Trump talks about how, hey, they're taking your jobs, they like to make fun of it. And I don't understand this elitism that's coming from the left. This is something that really pissed me off about liberals, progressives, is that y'all come off very elitist and out of touch. right? And I got videos for days. Byron Donalds was going in on CNN, Breakfast Club. My reaction is coming to that soon because of the fact that these people act like, oh, my crime is down. No, it's not. Compared to what? That's the answer you always ask when they say crime is down. Compared to what? Compared to 2020? No. Crime is up compared to 2020. Crime is up compared to 2021. Now crime is down compared to 2022. But where are you comparing it to? Right? And I don't want to get into a tangent because this is about the VP debates, but this is some of the things that irks me about these moderators, that it seems like they don't know nothing, but they're quick to insert their opinions to muddy the waters of how the American people is disseminating the information that's being presented in these debates. On Thursday night at the presidential debate, GOP candidate J.D. Vance contended that massive influx of illegals were causing house prices to rise, supply and demand. If you understand that, it is plausible to consider that that could be a possibility. But you know these moderators. The moderator, Margaret Bennett, challenged his assertion. He replied that after the debate, he would publish remarks from the Federal Reserve Board that supported his contentions, which he did only hours after the debate ended. Speaking on the issue, Vance stated at the debate, we do want to blame Kamala Harris, which is true, because she's the core source of the problem. How is 15 million illegals allowed to cross the border? Right? If you compare the illegal boarding crosses with Donald Trump, I think at max Donald Trump had 4 million people cross over the border his entire administration, while with Kamala Harris is at Biden-Harris administration, 15 million people, illegal crossings. Over 3 years of an administration, you're already at 15 million compared to an entire presidential term, only 4 million people cross the border. What's the cause? The border policies. The fact that Biden removed the executive orders that Donald Trump had placed.
First of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding.
In the executive office. Those are actions that the Biden-Harris administration participated in, and this is the effect. And you think, as an American, as a critically thinking individual such as myself, you think that I'm going to vote in someone who's a part of that mess in the first place, who thought it was a good idea, who got it wrong about Iran and who's going to start the war with Iran? Like, this is what I do. I look at the past. I say, what was the statements made in the past? A couple years, fast forward. Okay, what was the outcomes in the future? Was that person right or wrong? And that gives their level of credibility or weight to their predictions. This is why I like Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell's making predictions about affirmative action, and then the people say, "Oh, there's not enough time. We can't really see the outcomes of these policies." 60 years later, it happened exactly as Thomas Sowell says, and this is what gives someone credibility. Is that what they said in the past? Did it happen in the future? And this is why a lot of these Democrats, these liberals, they don't like you doing your own research. They don't like you looking back in the past and seeing what statements were being made at the time they were being made. Right? Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of house prices in the country. It is why we have massive increase in house prices that happen right alongside massive increase in illegal aliens. Alien populations under Harris's leadership, we have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out immigrants who are competing for these homes. This is why majority of Americans support mass deportation. But then Bennett then interjects, but Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to a higher housing cost. What evidence do you have that the migrants are a part of the problem? And just to avoid a long-winded, here's the tweet. As promised earlier tonight, here is Michelle Bowman on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. Given the current low inventory of affordable housing, the influx of new immigrants to some geographical areas can result in upward pressure on rent prices. He dropped the receipt. The human desire is infinite, but your resources are finite. And this is something that many Americans need to understand, that all this Democrats saying, we're going to spend money on this, we're going to spend money on that, we're going to spend money on this. My biggest example, and this has been my biggest attacking point on why I don't trust Kamala Harris's policy and her opportunity economy, is the fact that currently, right now in her administration, she has $42 billion. $42 billion to go and create internet for rural America, and she's not even created a single broadband connection in rural America. And she had the money. She had the money for 3 years already. It's been 1,000 days, and she still has not used a single. Actually, she has used some of that money for other things like climate change, and this is why I said this is like money laundering at this point. They want to spend all this money and then do nothing with it. They want to be able to say, look, this was the intentions of the $42 billion. We wanted to create bomb-burn internet Wi-Fi for rural America, and they didn't use a single dime to do it. But then when they run a campaign, this is what our administration has accomplished. We had invested $42 billion in internet in rural America, running on intentions. And it's time for voters to run on feasibility, probability, run on results. And one candidate does have the results, Donald Trump. One candidate is a maybe. And I made this statement before in prior videos, but a devil you know is better than a devil you don't know. And in this case, we know two devils, right? If I'm being, if I'm following the analogy to his conclusion. We know what Kamala Harris already brings to the table. We know what Donald Trump brings to the table. Who do we need mostly to solve the core issues that Americans are dealing with? Immigration, crime, inflation. Or are you going to put the person who broke your machine to also fix your machine? No. So why would you vote for Kamala Harris? There's no logical reason to vote for her. The only way you can rationalize voting for Kamala Harris is if you're a tribalist. You're just a tribal Democrat. And another thing for you Democrats that, is going to see this video, detract, get mad, I don't give a damn, but January 6th does not matter to nobody. Like, no one cares about January 6th. January 6th, election denialism only matters to Democrats. Only matters to Democrats. Because, end of the day, Democrats, you started it first. Al Gore, 2000, you first election denier. Then you got 2016, Hillary Clinton. And then you want to get mad about Donald Trump when 2 out of the 3 are Democratic people who are mad at they lost the election. Hillary Clinton to this day, still thinks that Donald Trump was illegitimate. But this is what you say. Oh, but she left. Yeah, Donald Trump left too, but you still holding it over him just because he doesn't want to admit he lost. Hillary doesn't even admit she lost. This is the double standard that many people talk about when these virtue signaling Democrats try to sit here and pretend that they're more virtuous than other people. This is why I don't trust liberals. And this is only making it worse. No one cares about January 6th. No one cares about whether or not Donald Trump wants to feel like he accepted the results of the election. The result is, look at his actions. He left office. So stop bringing it up. And I can't believe we wasted time talking about this garbage. And this is why I'm tired of journalists nowadays, because it seems like journalists are leading in with their political bias into the debate stage. Instead, they should have just went on a poll. This is what I would have done. If I was the moderator, this is how I would have went. This is how I would have picked my policy questions. I would look at polling, and the top issues in that category is how I would list out the questions for the debate. But these people, it seemed like, oh, look, journalists, or here, moderators, decide what questions you want to ask. And it's very personalized to them. I don't give a damn about climate change. Climate change ain't going to hurt me in 2 years. Climate change ain't going to hurt me in 4 years. I don't give a damn about whether Donald Trump is going to accept the results of the election. I care about the actions. Did he leave? Yes. Okay. I digress. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you believe that J.D. Vance did a good job? Do you believe J.D. Vance should have been more aggressive? Or you think he was just right like porridge? Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe once again, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.